It's about a few days ago and I'm in this bedroom and I'm reading a book on my Kindle called Indistractable. As I'm reading it, my brain is starting to produce ideas and knowledge based on what I'm just reading, like it's connecting the dots. And as soon as I get a thought, I open my journal or like a book and I just start writing down what I'm thinking. I do this every time I get an idea, every time I get a thought or an understanding. And this is how I remember everything. For sure, I'm glad that you're having the drive to study, read, and learn new knowledge so that, you can improve your life. If it's not just for like academic studying, just in any general studying or any general reading. I'm glad that you have it. A lot of people don't even have the drive to study. So first of all, that's great that you have it. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll have better retention of what you just learned. I use this tactic which I call brain notes. Now, I don't know if anybody else coined that term. In a sense, brain notes. Brain notes is essentially notes that you've taken based on relative to the topic, but based on what your brain understood. So for example, imagine you never knew that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. If someone told you that, how would you remember it? Like if someone told you mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, if you took the general conventional note-taking method, you would just write it down, okay, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, because that's how we learn notes. That's how the teachers told us to write, like just write down what's in the textbook, make points. Cool. But that's just level 1. To increase the level and your retention, instead of writing down what you just heard or you read, write down what your brain understood. So if someone told me, if I just read mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, my brain is starting to produce like understanding. So I read it a few times, like, okay, mitochondria is the powerhouse. What does powerhouse mean? It's like the energy source. So mitochondria is the name of the energy source of the cell. And that's why it's called the powerhouse, because it's a fancy name that textbooks use. Now that I've understood that, and my brain just produced all those thoughts, I can write it down. So if I learn something from a book, I'm not gonna write down a quote that I read or this exact same sentence that the book read. I'm gonna write down what my brain just understood. So for example, if I learn something like the 80-20 rule, and if it just said, okay, 80% of the results come from 20% of the causes, I'm not gonna write that down. I'm gonna write down what I've understood. I understood, okay, so generally 20% of the inputs of this is what I understood. So 20% of the inputs of any endeavor generally give 80% of the results. Now, it's not always 80-20, but most of the time, just for fairness, it's 80-20. Now that I've understood that, my brain just produced that understanding. I write that down, because when you write it down, now you essentially translated what your brain was thinking into words. This is what brain notes are. So when you keep doing this every time you learn, not just in general note-taking methods, literally every time you learn it, you write down what you've understood. Then your brain will remember it more. If I told a kid, okay, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, sure, they might remember it because they hear it all the time. But instead, if I just told the kid, explained it to him, okay, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell because it's the energy source of the cell. And that's why a lot of books call it the powerhouse. Now this kid understood that. Now that I gave reasons, now that I gave an actual meaning to the sentence, he's gonna remember that forever. Now he's gonna be like, okay, yeah, powerhouse, it's the energy source of the cell. And now he's gonna remember it forever. Because when we keep writing down the exact same words, textbook for textbook, note for note, it's it becomes memorization, and memorization isn't really reliable, especially for long term. If it's just short term, whatever. For long term thinking, especially for studying and just learning from books, you don't have to read it again. This is the importance of long term. You might think, okay, it's not useful to learn long term, just read short term, do the exam and leave. Sure, but again, you're not just having one exam, you have multiple exams per year, right? And they ask the same topics. So it might help you a lot, it will benefit you, it will serve you well to learn it for long term. How do you learn for long term? Make your own notes, so you don't have to read it again. By doing it short term, you're actually fucking up your future self, because your future self will forget it because it was just short term and he has to learn it again. You can save that energy because you will eventually become your future self. You can save that energy by just putting in the extra 10 minutes of writing down what your brain understood instead of what you just read. So from now on, every time you learn something, whether it's from a normal book or whether it's from studying, remember to take brain notes. Brain notes, again, is like notes relative to the topic, but based on what your brain just understood. Whatever your brain just said when you read that sentence, okay, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Whatever your brain understood. If it didn't understand anything, read it again, until your brain produces a translation, and then you write that down. You do this for everything you learn, whether it's a small topic, whether it's a large topic. When you translate it in a way that you can understand, it makes it much more palatable, and you can actually like remember it when you get a question on it. Because when someone asks you about something, you never really give a textbook answer, you kind of give like an explanation answer. When you're teaching your friend, you don't just give the textbook sentence, right? You kind of explain it to him. The same way, write it down somewhere, whether it's a journal, whether it's your notebook, write it down somewhere where your brain understands it. Bye.